On my birthday, my mother came to me and said that my sister needed a kidney. She dragged me to get a compatibility test and demanded to know why someone like me was fine while Jasmine was sick. I jokingly said, 600,000, I'll sell you a kidney. She looked at me with bitterness and said, asking for money at a time like this, you won't end up well. I was indeed dying. When the time comes, don't regret it, Mom. On my 24th birthday, my mother came to me. I work as a liquor salesperson, and that day, during a thank you banquet with clients, I drank a lot. The strong liquor started to feel invigorating. The lights at the party were too bright, making it hard to tell the time. A singer sang a song about the rainy winter finally passing. I wondered when my winter would end, maybe I would die this winter. But it's so cold. I'd rather leave on a warm day. She walked in, leaned against the wall, staring at me with undisguised disgust. Our encounters in the past always involved pretending not to know each other. My stomach empty, just alcohol, burning down my throat. Feeling sick, I rushed to the bathroom to throw up. Looking at my reflection, I felt like a wandering ghost. Against the mirror, she sneered, you have no shame, getting drunk with a bunch of people. I washed my face with cold water, ignoring her. I wanted shame too, but I had to eat, live, and people were waiting for me. She said, your sister has uremia, needs a kidney, and we're not a match. That's why she had never spoken to me before, but she came to me today. She gave birth to me after being raped and left me with my grandmother, who raised me with a mix of resentment and pity. You're just like your disgusting father, only reacting when Jasmine is sick, she said. I remained silent. I didn't know what to say. She eventually said, let's get tested. It was her first time initiating physical contact, guiding me into the car with a warmth I hadn't felt before. She drove fast, the cold wind rushing in through the open window. When I coughed, she said, don't puke in my car. I wanted to snap but held back. The test results showed a match with a 90% compatibility rate. I felt a mix of joy knowing I could sell myself for a good price. My mother's expression was hard to read. The doctor warned me about the lifelong commitment. I didn't tell him how short my life already felt. She pulled me aside, afraid I'd back out. You promised, don't make me lose respect for you. I joked back, when did I promise? It's just you talking. Her palm struck my face, making my nose bleed. Tears welled up in her eyes. She was scared because she loved Jasmine so much, unable to tolerate my attitude. Her questions echoed, if you don't give Jasmine a kidney, what will she do? Why are you so selfish? Why are you healthy while my Jasmine is sick? I had no answers, just as clueless about my existence in this world. Nevertheless, it doesn't matter. Someone like me is also sick. Someone like me will leave soon, but I know it's useless to tell her. I don't want to feel worse. She hates me, disgusts me, wishes I were dead. But bound by the law, I am still living in this world. She can only turn a blind eye and ignore me. But now, for the sake of the child she loves, she has to deal with me, this disgusting creature. I wiped the blood flowing from my nose on my sleeve and took a deep breath. 600,000. She was taken aback. I repeated, give me 600,000, and I will agree to exchange kidneys with you. She looked incredulous at first, then with a look of confirmation, she asked, you want to sell me your kidney? Why? What right do you have? Your very life was given by me. The lobby was a bit cold. I couldn't help but cough and said, if I disagree, then you can come with a knife. I didn't dare look at her again. I turned around, walked quickly out of the hospital. I opened my palm, there were still some bloodstains there. The cold wind kept seeping into my body from the cuffs and Kaleri felt my bones ache a bit. I didn't know if it was from the cold or from being sick. Most of the road in late autumn is covered with fallen leaves, but there are also some trees still showing a hint of green. I thought it wasn't a big deal, I was just like those withering leaves blown off first. The time for each tree is just different. I haven't seen my mom for several years. I only vaguely know about her situation. She seems to be very wealthy. It would take me many years of hard work to afford the car she drives, starving myself to be able to buy it. She also owns a factory where I used to work during summer vacations. At that time, I was assembling those parts in the workshop. She was walking with her daughter, Jasmine, looking so gentle and soft. I gave them a quick glance and quickly lowered my head. She had done a lot of charity work in society, and every summer vacation, the factory would recruit students over the age of 16. Most of my living expenses at that time came from Amy. We had no relation, yet she had been supporting me. But she was not doing well herself, dropped out early, had a weak heart, worked in various factories earning meager income, saving a little for me. So, that job was crucial for me. In the 2 months of summer vacation, I could ease Amy's burden. I tried to keep my head down, not daring to let her see me. I felt like a voyeur, hiding in the dark, carefully watching their happiness. Some are born in the light like Jasmine, just needing to accept the love. Some are born as rats in the gutter, despised by all, hiding here and there, barely surviving. But someone pulled me out of the gutter. I wanted her to have a better life. I wanted her to live. Thinking about my mom's current financial strength and her maternal love for Jasmine, I speculated that she would be willing to offer $600,000. In the evening, I returned to my small rented house. After Amy moved out, I was all alone. The weather recently turned cold suddenly, just like a child. It was so cold and gloomy. Back in the small town, I had longed for this. The old, dilapidated bus brought me here countless times, mingling with various odors, but I felt totally powerless. Even after so many years, I still couldn't find my footing in this city. I indulgently turned on the air conditioner, finally warming up the room a bit. I lay in bed wrapped in a blanket, staring at the ceiling, my hands and feet icy cold, as if I couldn't warm them no matter what. A knock on the door sounded, and I was so drained. I didn't want to deal with it, didn't want to get up, didn't want to open the door. But whoever it was seemed persistent, the knocking getting louder. I couldn't bear it and shouted, "Who is it?" No response from the other side, and I started to feel scared. Suddenly, I remembered I had insurance. If something really happened, there would be compensation from the insurance, right? I really needed money. I didn't know if I could still sell this kidney, and so, summoning up my courage, I went to answer the door. "Are you Mandy? How dare you open the door?" The person sounded angry. It was Jasmine's brother, Jackson. My mom married his dad and gave birth to Jasmine. He adored Jasmine, and we were classmates in high school. He was someone I used to like and ended up being the one who pushed me into the abyss. Or is it just people like you who look forward to such encounters? After all, would anyone like you? He said those words with a mocking expression. What gives you the right? Get out. I slapped him, my hands trembling. He wasn't angry, continuing, "What, getting mad? You can also get mad? Weren't you planning to sell a kidney? Selling yourself wouldn't be a big deal for you, right?" Step by step, he approached me as I kept retreating. His mocking gaze was piercing. I stopped and stared at him directly. "Then how much can you offer?" He froze for a moment, then with a look of confirmation, said, "Mandy, you are despicable." I looked up at him, countered, "If I'm so despicable, why did you come looking for me? You are even more despicable than me." It seemed I had provoked him. He dragged me to the bed, tearing at my clothes, as if I were a fish about to be dissected on a cutting board. I struggled fiercely, those unbearable memories enveloping me bit by bit. I felt like I was about to drown in that emotional state. He pinned me down, whispered by my ear as he held my hands and legs, "What are you doing? You wanted money, right? I'll give you money. Who are you putting on this show for?" My eyes seemed to be on the verge of tears, but I held them back tightly, giving up the struggle. He froze, looking at me. "How much can you give me?" I closed my eyes and asked. He got up, kicked over the small table beside him and said, "So anyone can pay, right?" I needed a lot of money and didn't have the energy to deal with him. He pulled me up, kissed me, then suddenly stopped. Mockingly, he said, "Mandy, what are you playing at? Who was the one who liked me so much that she did my homework, washed my jacket, and cooked soup for me? He slowly brought up those past actions and tore at my self-esteem. I hung my head in silence, like many times before in front of them, feeling like a criminal being insulted. Mandy, you don't really think I would like you, do you? He slapped his bank card against my face and then turned and left. Stopping suddenly with his back to me, he said, Mandy, selling a kidney is not like selling yourself. Think carefully and don't trade your life away. I picked up the bank card, tears rolling down my face. I kept telling myself it's okay, it will all end soon. Then suddenly I remembered something and chased after him. Jackson. Regretting it? You haven't given me the pin yet. He looked at me, his eyes full of disdain, and said, go ahead and keep selling your body piece by piece. Let's see how long you can sell for. I continued to listen to his mockery, waiting for him to finish before asking again. He answered a phone call, his expression suddenly softened. Jasmine, I'm getting some food for you, I'll be back soon. Jackson also had a gentle side. My mom also had a gentle side. Back in high school during a parent-teacher meeting, Jasmine's junior high section was not far from our high school section. The teacher kept asking me why my parents didn't come. I really wanted to tell her I didn't have parents. A few days before the parent-teacher meeting, I kept begging my grandmother to attend it for me. Otherwise, I would have to stand there in punishment, outside the school gate, with many eyes on me. I did all the chores, listening to her endless scolding. She called me a little scrounger. If it wasn't for me, my mother wouldn't ignore her. Finally, when she finished venting, I brought up the parent-teacher meeting. She looked me up and down, her murky eyes tinged with sarcasm, saying, you don't have parents, so why have a parent-teacher meeting? I refused to wait for her at the school gate, where people were coming and going. I saw my mother holding Jasmine's hand. Jasmine, like a lively little bird, kept chatting away. My mother listened patiently, with gentleness. I hid in a corner, afraid of being exposed to the sunlight like a moldy blanket, afraid of being seen in the corner like an insect, making others disgusted. It's okay, I've known for a long time why my mother detested me, those years of making it clear that my existence only added to their troubles. Wrapped in a blanket, I looked out through the narrow window at the bustling crowd, the room so quiet that you could only hear the hum of the AC blowing warm air. After a while, my phone rang. It was Amy calling. Mandy, happy birthday. The only person who remembered my birthday. I took out the cake she had ordered for me from the cabinet and lit the candles. The last birthday, the last wish. My teacher once told me that some have sweetness first, then bitterness, while others have bitterness first, then sweetness. God is fair and will compensate you later. My wish now is, God, compensate me in this life if you want, but give it to Amy. On the other end of the phone, Amy kept soothing me, saying she was out of town on a business trip, too busy lately. I nodded along, tears streaming down, and couldn't help but shout, Amy. What's wrong? Nothing. It's just really cold these days. Be sure to stay warm. I quickly hung up, holding the gift she bought for me, crying tears like rain. It was a set of skincare products she had chosen after much consideration. She said now that I was working, I needed to start taking care of myself. There were also professional clothes she bought for me in the closet. She was always worried about everything for me. She texted me an apology, saying she was too busy with work and couldn't celebrate with me this year. I asked her to video call me, but she said it wasn't convenient at the moment. I asked when would be a good time, and she said after finishing this busy period. I couldn't tease her anymore or she wouldn't be able to keep up the pretense. I knew she was in the hospital bed right now, trying not to let me know, but she didn't know how important she was to me. All those tough days, she helped me get through them. Amy, 5 years older than me, from the same small town as my grandmother, even the name she gave me was hers. I was about to start primary school then, but didn't have a formal name yet. My grandmother said just pick one randomly, and Amy was washing my hair at the time. She said, why not let her choose? She had seen a character's name like Mandy on TV, a cheerful girl, so call me Mandy since my grandmother didn't mind, that became my name. I was very attached to Amy. My first sentence when I was young was her name. After school, she would bathe me, wash my hair, and save up her allowance to buy me snacks. Sometimes when my grandmother was angry and wouldn't feed me, Amy would sneak her meals out under a different pretext, taking me to the back of the hill to eat. Her days were not easy either. She had a younger brother and always got scolded. I told her not to come, but she just said she couldn't finish her meals and needed to get scolded. After Amy finished junior high, she dropped out of school. I was still in elementary school back then. She firmly said she would study again after earning money, encouraging me to study hard. When I was in junior high, Grandma didn't want me to continue studying. I had no choice and nowhere to go. I called Amy to ask where she was working because I wanted to join her. She scolded me harshly, asking if I thought life outside was easy. She asked if I wanted to work in a factory all my life. I stayed silent. She suddenly asked, "They don't want to support you anymore? Say something, Mandy. It's all right. You go on with your work. I have other matters too." I hung up the phone and crouched on the floor crying. I knew we weren't even blood related, so I couldn't keep bothering her. But she returned home on the weekend, looking weary. She said she came back to visit, but I knew she didn't want to come back. Those people would only cling to her and suck her dry. We met on the familiar mountain, where wildflowers bloomed everywhere. She seemed tired but still smiled at me, asking, "What's wrong? It's only been half a year, and you don't recognize me?" She took my hand and calmly said, "Mandy, one of us must break free from this kind of life." She secretly sent me tuition and living expenses, caring more about my exam results than I did. Promised her that after graduating, I would support her education, but she couldn't wait that long. Amy had a heart condition since childhood, and years of hard work to support me worsened her health. Before she moved, I saw her will in the corner of the closet. It only had a simple sentence: "After my death, everything will be inherited by Mandy." She lived frugally all these years, staying in the staff dormitory and eating at the canteen while I was in school. She saved every penny, saying, "Mandy, soon we will have our home." She wanted to buy a small house in the city, a home for both of us, free from anyone kicking us out or scolding us. We planned to have a cat and a dog when we had our own place. We were close to affording a house when Amy couldn't wait any longer. She believed I was a good person, but deep down, I knew I was born with flaws. As for my illness, I wasn't surprised. My biological father died of leukemia. I remember him coming to school, begging for my help, promising to be a good father after the transplant. When I tried to take revenge, he said, "Mandy, the second chance is all thanks to you." He caused so much pain without consequences. His punishment was me. I faked medical procedures for a year, cutting off ties with them, and secretly took a leave of absence from school. Amy thought it was due to tuition issues, and we argued for a long time. Later, I lied to her about my mental health, and she didn't press further. But that year wasn't wasted. I earned money to ease Amy's burden. When I returned to school, my so-called father was already cremated. His wife came to me, questioning my cruelty, asking if I feared karma. Cruel? Refusing to help him doesn't make me cruel. What about those who do evil deeds? He raped Jasmine's mother, gave birth to me, then brought endless nightmares into my life. I just wanted to study hard, graduate soon, and give Amy a fresh start. She believed her life was doomed, but I wanted to help her rise again, to stand on the peak. After graduating, I worked hard and saved every penny. I urged her to study, even picked schools for her, but she kept finding excuses. When I saw her medical records, I wondered if this was divine retribution. The world's malice surpassed my expectations, especially when nosebleeds grew frequent. My diagnosis wasn't surprising. What if I died before Amy? Maybe there was hope for us. I didn't have to attend that cocktail party, but my mother would be there. Learning about Jasmine's illness, my leukemia was still treatable. So I refused chemotherapy, taking piles of pills every day, swallowing them back after vomiting. I wanted to sell myself at a high price. She really came, just as I expected. I should be happy because at least I still have some use. Before the surgery, my mom found out about my illness and asked me, "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Her calm face could also be so angry and fierce. I smiled at her and said, "Don't worry, Mom. My organs haven't been infected and can still be used." My words stunned her for a moment. I continued, "You've already paid, can't take it back now." Before going into the operating room, I got the password from her, afraid that I might die on the operating table. I messaged Amy about the bank card and password, adding, "Don't be afraid. Just in case I forgot, sending it to you first." Amy easily gets worried and anxious, so better not let her know. If I really die on the operating table, there's a letter I left for her at home. I had given my will to the lawyer a long time ago, seemed like there's nothing to worry about. I just really want to see her one more time. But I'm also afraid to see her because she won't agree. After being anesthetized, I fell asleep. Jasmine and I were in the same ward, everyone was surrounding her. She looked like a little Princess. Jackson noticed that I woke up, hesitated to look me in the eyes and asked, "Why didn't you tell me you're sick?" "It won't affect your sister, my organs haven't been infected," I explained patiently to him. Suddenly, his eyes turned red and he shouted at me, "What do you think I'm asking for? What am I to you?" I don't know what I am to him. Back in high school, he was my desk mate, 1.5 years older, always joking around with me and asking me to call him brother. He would secretly fill my desk with snacks, help me organize my notes. He was someone I secretly had a crush on. But later, after he found out about my identity, he threw away my books, pressed me against the wall telling me not to let Jasmine know. He said if Jasmine was affected because of me, he would fight me. Jasmine eventually stopped going to school, started smoking and drinking. He felt it was all because of me. I appeared and their family changed like this. After all, the little princess always had reasons for everything. They could always cover for her. My every move was wrong. Even though I had never been to their house, I never asked my mom for a single cent. After my grandma passed away, they came to handle her funeral, and then I appeared in front of them, letting them know that there was someone like me. Ironically, it was him who disgusted me and loathed me back then, and now he was the one questioning me. Looking at his emotional state, I couldn't help but laugh and say, "Am I even worthy to be someone to you?" He was stunned, then countered, "So this is all your act of pretending to be pitiful, isn't it?" His words made me laugh. Why should I pretend to be pitiful in front of them? Even if I were pitiful, what good would it do? As I laughed, it turned into a severe coughing fit. I covered my mouth tightly as blood seeped through my fingers. He seemed startled, rushed over and held my shoulder, asking, "Mandy, you're joking, right? How could it be so serious?" I couldn't muster the strength to answer him. Everything was blurry. I could only hear the voices of the nurses and doctors around me. They pulled him away, pushing me out. Amy found out anyway, rushed over looking disheveled. I lay on the bed, smiling at her. Her eyes were red, but she smiled at me. "Mandy, you jerk, how dare you?" She carefully checked my wound. I reached out to stop her, but failed. Her tears fell heavily on the sheets. "Mandy, doesn't it hurt?" Her voice was so soft, yet I could see her trembling all over. "It's numb with anesthesia, doesn't hurt," I reassured her. "Don't cry. It's not good for your heart." I quickly wiped her tears away. "Mandy, you can't do this to yourself," she wiped her tears, saying softly. At that moment, my mom walked in carrying porridge for Jasmine. She glanced at me but hesitated. "No, she's Jasmine's mom, not mine." Jasmine fell back to sleep. I wiped Amy's tears and coquettishly said, "Amy, I'm hungry." She hurriedly went out to get me food, reassuring me she'd be back soon. Honestly, my appetite had already decreased significantly. Now in the room, there's only Jasmine, me, and her mom. She came closer to me, the first time with a hint of apology. "I rushed here earlier and forgot to bring yours." "It's fine, you've already paid," I replied. "Do you have to speak to me like this?" The atmosphere suddenly turned cold. She took out a card from her pocket again. Emotionally, I should have refused, but rationally, I knew this money could help Amy live a good life. She handed it to me, with indescribable emotions, saying, "You're in the early stages, there's still hope." I accepted the money, expressing my gratitude. "Although I shouldn't take your money, I really can't refuse it at this moment." Avoiding my gaze, she turned to wipe Jasmine's face. I placed the card under the pillow and watched her gentle demeanor from the corner of my eye. Finally, I apologized. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have appeared in your life." She hesitated a moment, not responding. "The best thanks I can give you is to not bother you anymore. If there's another life, I'll make sure we have no connection. Don't talk about another life, just live this one well." She still didn't look at me again, but suddenly said these words. I can't explain my feelings for her clearly. There has been hatred, as well as regret. When she came to me for Jasmine, there was even a little bit of discomfort and pain deep inside. But more than that, there's gratitude. At least I got the money to cure Amy. Fate played with me, disgusted me, tortured me, but it also protected me, allowing me to meet Amy. I can let go of all this. I can stop caring. There's someone in this world who has no blood relationship with me but values me more than anyone else. This life is worth it. After taking care of Jasmine, she sat on the chair next to me, looking hesitant to speak at that moment. My father's wife barged in, looking at me with a sense of revenge and said, "Thanks for taking care of your father, so I came to see you." She put down the fruit basket and left. I knew her intention for coming, but it's okay. Given 10 or 100 chances, I would still do the same. My mom's face turned cold as that woman left, and soon a nurse came to adjust my bed. She didn't even look at me, with an expression of annoyance. I think that woman reminded her of something unpleasant, hence her attitude towards me changed. I looked at her, wanting to say something, but I couldn't get the words out. They stuck in my throat, piercing my heart, bloody. Even if I said it, it would disgust people with a hint of blood. She met my eyes and suddenly taunted, "You're just like that beast, just accepting money." She wasn't wrong. What she said was true. I had already sold myself for money. The wound on my stomach still throbbing. If there was enough time, I could have sold something else. But coming from her mouth, I still couldn't hold back the sadness. I stopped looking at her, tightly holding my hands under the blanket. I had thought I could lead Amy to a brighter place with these hands, but fate changed its mind, and I could only use them for the final exchange. Amy gave up studying. They said she had no education, almost 30. They said this was how her life would be. Even Amy herself told me, there are things in life that you can't make up for. But I just can't accept it, not from me. I just don't want to. I really want her to live well. I am willing to bet everything I have left to give her a chance to start over. As the nurse pushed my bed away, my hair began to fall out more, and Amy worriedly couldn't sleep all night. I was afraid she would find out. She had been pushing me to get checked. I lied to her that I had already checked once before the operation. If I waited longer, I couldn't fool her, and I was afraid time was running out, so I discharged myself as soon as possible back home with Amy. She was still lying to me, saying her business trip was over, to stay with me for a few days. She cooked for me every day, took me for walks, wrapped me in thick blankets, and worried if I was cold. It was already winter, the trees were all bare, and the ground covered with dried leaves. I held her hand and said, "Amy, winter will pass quickly. You are the most important person to me in this world." She coughed a few times but suppressed it because I was there. "Why so sentimental all of a sudden?" She lightly tapped my forehead. That night, after cleaning up the house, it started snowing outside. Calculating a certain dose of sleeping pills, I went to the next room to take them. I set an alarm by her bedside, for her to wake up and take me to the hospital, and left a pre-written letter. The lights in the room were on, so she shouldn't be scared. I glanced at her for the last time. Unfortunately, I couldn't bid her farewell properly. The pain intensified, and I told myself that taking these pills would end it. "Goodbye, Amy. Goodbye, sister. I'm sorry, I can't continue to be with you." She knew that Mandy was truly no longer in this world. Amy stayed in the hospital for a long time, watching the winter gradually pass. The trees outside began to sprout green buds, warm sunlight shining on her body. She felt a bit uncomfortable for a moment. But suddenly, tears poured down because she suddenly remembered how Mandy used to pout and ask her, "Why are autumn and winter so cold? When will spring arrive?" It's freezing to death. Mandy would never see spring again. After being discharged, she returned to the small house where they used to live. Mandy's room was very tidy. They used to argue because Mandy didn't like to tidy up, but she shamelessly said, "This is called organized chaos. Besides, how can I highlight my sister's room without my mess?" On the desk was a notebook with information prepared for her, schools she had chosen, and teachers she had contacted for her. And the money she had saved for her, $170,000, was from her several jobs over the past 2 or 3 years, and $50,000 from her mother, who said it was the money she got for selling her kidney. But she already knew that her mother couldn't bear to let her undergo the operation. She was still lying to her, afraid that she would feel guilty. She lay on her bed, the quilt still smelling like her. She curled up in the quilt, crying uncontrollably. Amy knew she shouldn't be like this, but since Mandy left, she felt like she had lost all her strength, only the beating heart in her chest reminding her to live. She didn't know how long she had been lying at home until Jackson burst in through the door. He asked her in confusion, "Where's Mandy?" "I have news about her bone marrow match." When Amy heard the news, she was stunned because she knew with certainty that Mandy had given up her life for her. "She's dead. How could this be? How?" Jackson couldn't believe it, muttering to himself. Behind him was Jasmine, a girl who looked delicate, cute, and innocent, her eyes turning red as tears fell. She seemed like a princess untouched by the worldly matters, shedding tears for a tragic story. Only Mandy, who in the dead of winter broke her leg to earn money and never shed a tear, wasn't naturally so strong. Fate just never treated her kindly. "Get out. You're not welcome here." Instinctively, she felt that Mandy wouldn't want to see them either. "Jasmine, go home first, I have something to ask." Jackson dismissed Jasmine, then squatted down, his eyes red, and asked her with anguish, why did Mandy leave so quickly? She couldn't stand his hypocritical appearance and, with a malicious smile, asked him, "Do you want to know why Mandy suddenly changed her attitude towards you?" Jackson suddenly felt anxious but couldn't help wanting to know, but Amy lost control, grabbing his shoulders, angrily and painfully questioning him. "That evening during study session, she begged you to take her home. Why did you refuse? Why did you not want to? Don't you like her? Is your affection that cheap?" That night, when her father and a few thugs came looking for her, she was terrified and pleaded with you to take her home. What did you say? You said you had to go back and celebrate your sister's birthday. Then the thugs assaulted her. Do you know why she was on leave for the following half a month? She was sending the scum to prison. Amy's voice was choked up as she finished, a secret she had intended to keep for a lifetime. But why did they get to live without any guilt? Why? She just wanted him to know, even though she knew it wouldn't change anything. She regretted immensely because Mandy got into a prestigious high school, and at that time, she was working near her school, so she let her stay with her. Dazed, Jackson left their rental house. The snow on the road was getting deeper, and it seemed like there was a lot of snow this year. This winter was just so cold. He couldn't admit it was his fault. He used to think she was playing him. He had shown her a bad attitude, and even in her final illness, he treated her that way. The road was slippery, he couldn't keep his balance and fell. He lay in the snow, his clothes slowly getting wet, but he felt nothing. Tears rolled down his cheeks, as he softly called out to the vast sky, "Mandy, I'm sorry." Mandy, it must have been so hard, right? He remembered accompanying his stepmother to deal with her mother's funeral. Mandy stood there, like a withered sapling. People nearby said that she originally took her grandmother to the hospital, but the grandmother passed away, and she carried the body back. This scene of a teenager walking alone on a mountain road on a rainy night carrying a corpse was unimaginable. But Jasmine had a strong reaction to her appearance. She would often ask quietly, "Would Mom like my sister, not me?" Poor sister. She was overly concerned, but eventually, everyone knew the reason why. Mandy's birth was not her choice. Yet no one wanted to face their own problems, instead directing their emotions toward her. Mandy's grandmother was afraid of people finding out, so she prevented her daughter from having an abortion. But when it was too late, she couldn't go through with it. She refused to acknowledge her responsibility and shifted the blame to Mandy, who was young and defenseless. Mandy's mother never wanted to see her from the beginning. Her birth was seen as a mistake. Jackson covered his face, admitting that he was also one of the executioners, but there was no chance of redemption. In the spring, Amy found a puppy. She was still not in good spirits, still living in their former rental house. The puppy would pester her every day. Sometimes when she lost control lying on the bed, the puppy would bark beside her. It would nuzzle her hand and run around her in circles. Sometimes she can't help but think of Mandy, and when she cries, the little dog will whimper and lie beside her legs. Maybe it's the presence of the dog that gives her some spirit, or maybe it's because she has to go out to walk the dog and life goes on. She unconsciously buys the food that Mandy used to love and picks out cute little dresses for her when the weather gets warmer. But the beating heart in her chest reminds her constantly that Mandy is gone, that Mandy gave her life until another winter arrives. She takes her dog for a walk, and that day in the alley, she sees the man. She will always remember that man, the one they reported to the police with Mandy, the one they sent to jail, only for him to be released soon after due to lack of evidence. The incident had hurt Mandy more than she realized. She had long felt that she didn't want to live, that her biological father could easily hand her over to a monster. She often has nightmares, waking up in the middle of the night soaked in sweat. She smiles less, focusing only on studying every day, determined to get into a good school, which she eventually does. But how could a fresh graduate make a lot of money? She chooses to work in sales, to start a small business, but no matter how hard she runs, she can never outrun fate. One monster is dead now, but another one is still out there. She starts wearing makeup and appearing in front of that monster, pretending to be timid, hiding from him under discreet surveillance. The monster remains the same. He grabs her by the neck, and for a moment, she considers just letting go, so that this monster would die too. But then she sees a faint image of Mandy, trying to stop the man but powerless. Her heart beats in her chest, reminding her that this life was given to her by Mandy, that she can't just die like this. She struggles, and the little dog starts biting the monster. Stabbed by the monster with a knife, the dog's cries and pleas for help finally attract someone to come, and she is saved. She holds the dog as it continues to live after treatment, still carefree and playful around her, but she always has to be dragged home at night. She names the dog Coco, after Mandy's favorite candy. She starts attending the school Mandy picked out for her and buys a small house. Mandy's mother visits her and asks if Mandy left any messages for her. She calmly responds, "Mandy was very understanding. She knew you're sick of all this." The woman gets angry but then suddenly stares at her chest, the hurtful words she wanted to say evaporating instantly. She leaves gracefully but drives straight to her mother's gravesite. Suddenly she remembers that with Mandy's personality, she probably wouldn't want to meet any of them again, and when she goes down later, she won't see her either. As she walks on the small road in the town, the setting sun casts long shadows. She sees a small Mandy running towards her in a daze, and she pushes her away time and time again, all her emotions unleashing onto her. She just can't control herself, as seeing her always triggers those painful memories and her mother's cruelty. She recalls the look Mandy gave her in the hospital, feeling a bit guilty at the time, but the appearance of that woman made her lose her rationality completely. It was only later, through Amy, that she knew the truth. She realizes she wasn't the only one suffering all these years. A tear falls from her eye, which she wipes away. A voice message from Jasmine comes through her phone, bridging the gap between past and present. Life must go on.